Okay, so now we're on BT8 and we're looking at the theme of offspring. So the big question is, who is going to be the offspring from Genesis 3:15, the offspring of the woman who's going to crush the devil's head? And you've just read Genesis chapters 4 to 5. And so now let's just break it down. Basically, you've read through like a family tree, what in the Bible is called a genealogy. All this list of names that often people can think, well, what's that all about? Well, check it out. The question is, who's the offspring going to be? You've had this big promise about the offspring, and now the story goes on. So we've got Adam and Eve. They give birth to Cain. Is Cain the offspring of the woman who is going to have hostility against the offspring of the devil and is then going to crush the devil's head? Well, sadly, no. You know the story. He kills his brother. And look at 1 John 3:12. If you turn there, it's very interesting what it says of Cain. Depending on your translations, it will say something like Cain, who was born of the evil one, or it might just say Cain of the evil one. What does it say? 1 John 3:12. Belong to the evil one, is that NIV? What else have we got? Of the evil one, that's ESV. The Greek says ek to poneru, if I remember rightly, which means of the evil one, and that of someone can be used in ancient Greek to say born of someone. Those who are born of God, who are ek theou, of God. And so here what you've got is the idea that Cain is offspring of the devil. He is of the devil. He is born of the devil. He belongs to the devil. So in the New Testament, we find out that Cain is one of the offspring of the devil. So you're wondering, what kind of offspring does the devil have? Well, you find it in Cain. It doesn't mean that Cain literally was born, like it wasn't his mum did something strange with the devil. Same way that when Jesus in John 8 says, you are of the devil, he's not saying, as one preacher once said, this is like saying their mum was knocking boots with the devil. That's totally missing the point. What it's saying is, you're offspring of the devil. You are like the devil. Children do what their parents do. If back in the day, if you grew up and your dad was a carpenter, guess what you would become? A carpenter. You would be like them. And the offspring of the devil are the people who act like the devil. Okay? In John 8, he says your father was a murderer, and he's saying this is why you don't love the truth, because you do what your father does. I'm totally paraphrasing. You have to look it up later. So Cain is offspring of the evil one. Then he has a son called Enoch. He has a son called Irad. He has a son called Mehujael. He has a son called Methushael. And then he has a son called Lamech, who's the first gangster rapper. Right, so turn there, please. Genesis 4:23 to 24. You're going to see the first gangster rapper. You're going to see the components that you would have in an MTV video. Okay, so you got Lamech. Now, by the way, noticed this is number 7 in the family tree. Can you count that down on your chart? That you see how Lamech is number 7. That's significant, yeah. In the Bible, sometimes in genealogies, they will cut people out of the genealogy to make us an even number, to kind of be like 7 now, boom. Like 7 would be the number of what? Completion. So it's like something significant's happening, number 7. Now check it out. The same would happen with Assyrian genealogies. The Assyrians used to cut people out of their family tree as well. So it's different to a family tree today. If you write a family tree today, you're supposed to put everyone in. In ancient times, that wasn't how you did it. Also, what you'll find in some of the family trees is that they will end with the 3 sons of someone. So if you look on your chart, you can see at the bottom, you've got the 3 sons of Lamech, Jubal, Jabal, and Tubal Cain. And then at the end, with you got the 3 sons in the other chart, or in the other line, of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So this genealogy has been arranged a certain way to teach theological truths. So you get to, in the line of Cain, you get to number 7, right? And so, boom, the number of completion or perfection. Like now we get to this line. What's this line all about? Genesis 4:23. Lamech said to his wives, okay, few chapters ago, yeah, what does God say about marriage? Man and woman become one flesh. Now you've got polygamy going on, right? Now, polygamy goes on a lot in the Old Testament. The patriarchs do it as well, yeah? But it's just interesting that the first mention of polygamy here is with Lamech from the line of Cain. He's got his women around him. This is like an MTV video, yeah? He's there in his mansion, yeah, or whatever, I don't know, tent, whatever. And he's got all these women around him, yeah? So first sign, yeah, gangster rapper. Then he says, Ada and Zillah, listen to me, wives of Lamech, hear my words, right? So he's spitting lyrics to them, okay? Maybe at this stage it's just spoken word, you know, I don't know if his son's doing a beatbox or something. I doubt it, right? But there's something going on here. He's writing lyrics, okay? He's writing lyrics, right? There's music happening in this line. And he says, I've killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. So check it out, right? Some guy has wounded him. And what did he do in response? He killed them. Yeah? So he's like, someone tried to step to me and I murked them. I killed them dead. Right? So this is not good, right? This is not good. You're thinking, where's the offspring going to come? The good offspring. And you're like, this line don't look no good. When you get to number 7, look how he's going on. Someone just wounds him and he kills him in response, thinks he's justified. Then he starts doing some bad theology. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. So now he's saying, remember Cain? Cain said to God, oh, my punishment is too bad. Yeah. And then God shows Cain mercy. He gives him judgment, but he also gives him mercy. Yeah. And so God says in Genesis 4:15, anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. And now Lamech is trying to claim that for himself. And he's saying, well, anyone does anything to me, not just 7 times, but 70 times. So this is bad news. Lamech is bad news, right? And this is what's going on in this line. Now look at his kids. He has Jubal, who Genesis 4:20, he's known for being a farmer. Now, farming had already been going on. We know from the story of Cain and Abel. But this is the guy who now gets known big time for farming. So he's the guy who really develops it. Then you've got his brother Jabal. He's a musician. He's known for music. Now, his dad's already written these lyrics. But his son's really known as the music man. You know. What's that?
Is it not the wrong way around? Yeah. Isn't it Jubal and Jabal?
Have I mixed them round the wrong way? Jabal's the farmer and Jubal is the musician. My bad, sorry. Just the slip of one letter. Do you know there's actually been theological divides over one letter before? Let's hope it doesn't happen in this room. And then the other brother, Tubal Cain, yeah, named after his great-great-great-great-great-granddad. And he is well known, Genesis 4:22, for being a blacksmith. Right? So what you've got, these guys, they're developing the culture. They're building up things, and either Cain or Enoch has built a city, depending on your translation, and there's different views of how to translate the Hebrew there. It either says that Cain built a city and named it after Enosh, or it's actually saying that Enosh built the city. Some people say it couldn't be Cain because Cain was told to wander around, so how could he have ever started a city? But basically what you're seeing in this line is they're building up culture, right? You've got music, farming, tools, right? But there's no hope in this line that the offspring is going to come and destroy the devil, because Lamech is the big name in this one, and it doesn't look good with Lamech. So this is kind of a sad story. You're like, oh, and then you get to Genesis 4:25. Adam made love to his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, God has granted me another child in place of Abel since Cain killed him. So we're reminded of the previous sad story of Cain killing Abel, and we've just been through this depressing genealogy, and now we got Seth, and there's this idea of hope. Maybe the offspring's going to come through Seth. So now on your chart, look at the 3rd line down, we got Seth. Maybe number 3 will be the one. Then you have Enosh, Seth's son. And it says in Genesis 1:26, at that time, people began, and what does it say in the Bible? Right? To call on the name of the Lord, which probably means to worship the Lord through prayer and sacrifice. If you turn turn over your page, got Gordon Wenham, who's a well-known Old Testament scholar who's written a commentary on Genesis, in the Word Biblical Commentary. And on Genesis 1:26, he says, to call on the name of the Lord is used elsewhere in Genesis of the patriarchs, and he gives some references. And it seems to be an umbrella phrase for worship, most obviously prayer and sacrifice. On this view, Genesis 4:26 is noting the origin of regular divine worship, just as the preceding verses have noted the origins of farming, music, and metallurgy. Whoever knew it was called that, eh? Though Cain and Abel offered sacrifice, this verse notes its reintroduction on a regular basis. And then he gives other examples of that, Genesis 9:20 and Genesis 10:8. So in the time of Enosh, worship seems to get reintroduced in a big way, just like people had made a big deal of farming or music or blacksmith stuff, metallurgy. And under Enosh, people begin to worship the Lord. So right now you're thinking, maybe Enosh is the offspring. This is looking good so far. Maybe Enosh is the offspring. But then he dies, and he has a son, Kenan. He has a son, Mahalalel. Has a son, Jared. And then he has a son, Enoch. Now, what number is Enoch? Count from Adam. 7. So remember, Lamech in the other line was number 7. Remember, these guys will cut out names and all that to make a significant point. So we get to number 7. We got Enoch. Genesis 5:22 says that Enoch walked faithfully with God. So Lamech does the first gangster rap, right, and kills someone. Yeah, so the second ever murder that we got recorded here anyway. And then Enoch walks faithfully with God. What does that remind you of so far in the Bible story? Adam and Eve, God's walking in the garden. Okay, so we've got a theme going on here. Then Enoch has a son called Methuselah. Methuselah has a son called Lamech. This is a different Lamech. Lamech has a son called Noah. And Noah's name means, it sounds like the Hebrew for rest. What does that remind you of? Yeah, in the garden. God creates, he rests. Now check it out. God doesn't rest because he has to, because he's tired. It's interesting. When you read the other nations, when they made their creation stories, like I think is it the Egyptian in their account? The gods rest because they're tired, right? Whereas God creates rest because he wants to, because he seeks rest. It's a totally different reason why God creates rest, because the Bible tells us he doesn't tire. And then Noah, he walks faithfully with God. Genesis 6:9. So we've got this repeated theme of walking faithfully with God. So you've got the idea in this family tree, in this line, you're like, maybe the offspring's going to come from here. Maybe Noah is going to be the one who stamps on the devil's head. And then it ends with Noah's 3 sons, the same way that the line of Cain ends with his 3 sons. So you've got a neat little, 2 little, what would you call it, family trees in a sense, that you're supposed to sort of compare with one another and see the differences in them and see what they're trying to emphasize there. So, what I want you to do now, you're going to spend 5 minutes talking the person next to you through this family tree, right? And then you're going to answer the question of how does this point to Christ? But first, I just want to ask, has anyone got any questions about that? About this family tree here from Adam and Eve? Sorry.
I just wanted to ask, is that consistent, that whole 7th person in all of the family trees in the Bible?
That's a very good question. I'm not too sure if it is consistent, but I would say the thing with it ending with 3 children, you see that again when it gets to Terah, Abraham's dad, and you see at the end of that genealogy it says, and Terah had 3 sons, Noah, Abraham, and the other 2 people. So we see that going on, but that would be something to think about, the 7. When we come to Matthew's gospel, there is something significant going on with the numbers as well. Yeah.
On my Bible, the footnote says that Noah sounds like the Hebrew for comfort. Does that have the same implication as rest?
Yeah. It does. It does. Comfort and rest. Yeah. And we're going to look at Noah next time. Yeah.
Right, does Lamech rhyme in Hebrew?
Does it? You know what? I'll check that out in a minute, and we'll see how it flows in Hebrew. But you got to bear in mind, Hebrew poetry. The question was, does Lamech's lyric rhyme in Hebrew? Hebrew poetry doesn't rhyme. So if you ever hear Hebrew poetry, for our ears, it sounds really weird. It doesn't rhyme, and people haven't been able to work out if it meters either. You might know what meter is, you might not, but people got different theories of how it worked. But it's basically different. So his flow would have been, very different. So yeah, but obviously all the stuff I said about Lamech rapping and that was very tongue-in-cheek. So don't be like, he's a rapper.